What's up, guys? My name is Adam. I am your coach of the Titletown Tyrantrums, part of the National Exhibition Syndicate, and I am here to bring you the Week 6 match against the Detroit Darkrais. As I discussed in previous videos, I have fallen really far behind, but I do finally have all that free time that I constantly have been talking about, so for once I can actually sit down and record and try to catch up. So for the next couple days, that's what I'll be doing. I'll be recording, editing, doing all that kind of stuff. But first, we have to start from where we left off, which is Week 6 against the Detroit Darkrais. They are one of the original teams for the NES in our test season, returning for Season 1. And looking at their team, which you will see in the layout down below, the things that I was most concerned about coming into this week were Garchomp, Mega Altaria, and the Azelf, which the coach actually traded for this match back a few weeks back when I played him, and so those were the three things that kind of piqued my eye, piqued my interest, especially Mega Altaria, because once that thing sets up, there's not a whole lot you could do, as well as Garchomp, if it's scarfed, can be a real pain in the butt to deal with. So without talking too much more about what I was going to face, I'll get to that as I kind of cover it. We're going to talk about the team that I was bringing this week. The first Pokemon that I brought was Elena the Milotic with Leftovers and Marvel Scale. I figured there were enough things on the team that might try to status me that Marvel Scale would be better than Competitive, which is its other ability, and then has Ice Beam, Scald, Dragon Tail, and Recover with a physically defensive spread. Ice Beam, of course, for Garchomp, and for Mega Altaria, Scald for really anything that I had to hit. And then Dragon Tail can be useful if I don't like the matchup on my Milotic. I can phase things out. Obviously, I can't phase out the Mega Altaria, but if I'm able to get rocks up with Skarmory, which we'll talk about in a minute, I can deal just chip damage throughout the match, and then recover obviously to keep my Milotic around as long as possible. The next thing that I decided to bring was Jeremy the Noivern, the Choice Scarf variant with Frisk and Dark Pulse, Draco Meteor, Flamethrower, and U-Turn. Draco Meteor and Flamethrower are really the two components of the set. Flamethrower to hit Clang Clang, but Draco Meteor is really the move that I want to use the most. Dark Pulse was for the Azelf because U-Turn was not going to do the kind of damage that you might want from a super effective hit, and also U-Turn because it's a Scarf set, so if I send it out and I don't like the matchup, I can get out of there right away. Looking back on this match, Jeremy this wasn't the best set to bring, maybe not the best Pokemon to bring, but looking at it, when I built the team, it seemed like it would be a really useful kind of pivot to have throughout the match. The next thing I brought was Alark the Skarmory with Stealth Rock, Defog, Whirlwind, and Pursuit, with the Rocky Helmet and the ability Sturdy. Stealth Rock and Whirlwind were kind of the tactics that I wanted to use throughout this match. I wanted to kind of threaten things from switching in and out a lot. And then Defog to get rid of any rocks that Azelf or Garchomp might want to set up on my side of the field at any point in the match. And then Pursuit was something I chose, knowing that Azelf might lead. I could, kind of Pursuit trap it in if it wanted to switch out. But really, this was another Pokemon where, looking back on it, I probably could have brought something else instead. But at the time, it seemed like a really solid defensive wall to kind of build my team around. The next thing we had was Rose the Rose Raid with the Assault Vest and Technician with Energy Ball, Sludge Bomb, HP Ice, and Shadow Ball. I really probably don't have to explain Assault Vest or Technician. That's what I ran for most of the season with this Rose Raid. Coverage, Energy Ball, and Sludge Bomb obviously stab, HP Ice for the couple Dragon types that I might have to face, and then Shadow Ball to hit things like the Gallade and the Azelf, and also just hit anything for neutral damage that Energy Ball or Sludge Bomb might not hit. The next thing I brought was Mega Pinsir Enzo with the ability obviously going to be Aerolite, with knockoff, quick attack, return, and close combat. I elected against Swords Dance this week in lieu of knockoff, of course, for the Porygon 2. I used to run Porygon 2 when I did a lot of showdown battling, and I know that it can be surprisingly difficult to play around if you don't have knockoff or you don't have the coverage, which is why Mega Pinsir is kind of my anti-Porygon 2 with knockoff and close combat. And then, of course, max speed, max attack, pretty much what you expect of Mega Pinsir. It's just no Swords Dance this week. And the last Pokemon I decided to bring was Kai, the Mew, with Weakness Policy Synchronized, and the Nasty Plot, Baton Pass, Ice Beam, and Flamethrower. The goal of Mew was to get hit by a super effective move, whether that be Knockoff, U-Turn, Shadow Ball, something else. Hopefully live it, and then get the boost, possibly get another boost if I couldn't get one originally with Nasty Plot, and the Baton Pass it to Roserade or Noivern and just do damage. And then Ice Beam, Flamethrower, they're just two really solid coverage moves. They hit everything, usually for neutral damage at least, between the two of them. And so those are the 6 Pokemon that I elected to bring, and in just a second we will talk about the match that we had. Alright guys, and now we are back with the match portion of the video. As you can see in front of you, my opponent elected to bring Kyurem, Azelf, Gallade, Weavile, Drapion, and Porygon 2. So unfortunately, the 2 Pokemon that I prepared for the most, the Garchomp and the Mega Altaria, are nowhere to be found. And I think that you'll find throughout the course of the battle that that was, immediately put me at a huge disadvantage because I prepared so hard for those 2 Pokemon, only to have neither of them come, and to have something like the Weavile come instead, as well as the Kyurem. So I elected to lead at first with my Noivern just to see what I would have to be dealing with in the first turn. My opponent elects to lead with Azelf, not really a surprise. I hit it with the U-turn to get back out of there and to send in Skarmory. When Azelf puts its rocks up, I've seen plenty of Azelfs in battle. I know that they usually carry things like Stealth Rock, Psyshock, Explosion, and then a 4th move. I think they might carry U-turn sometimes. But I thought this would be a good chance for me to get my rocks up as well. Of course, I lost my Rocky Helmet. What I didn't expect was for him to stay in. I thought maybe he would want to get out. I thought that Pursuit was my best move. Right away in this battle, I was misplaying. I should have got my rocks up. I should have defogged in the first couple turns. Instead, I let him get a Reflect up. I just keep trying to kill him with Pursuit. He gets an Explosion off basically for free before I finally elect to put my Stealth Rocks up. And because I didn't defog, now the rocks will be stuck on my side of the field, because I'm probably going to have to choose at some point between putting my rocks back up and defogging them away. So he brings in his Porygon 2 and hits Skarmory with Charge Beam. At this point, Skarmory's basically done. It has no method of recovery. So I decided to let it go down, and it manages to survive a Rock Slide from the Drapion, but at 1% health and the flinch. It really didn't matter. At this point, I realized that I kind of had a problem. My defensive wall was down, and I still had Gallade, potentially Drapion, and of course Weavile for sure. That all would probably be carrying physical moves, as well as my opponent has Reflect up. So I elected to send in Jeremy, thinking that he had my best damage output of all my Pokemon with Draco Meteor. And it did do a lot of damage, but my Choice Scarf does get knocked off, and Knockoff does a pretty good amount of damage as well. And so I elected to keep Jeremy in. He was at 0.5 special attack, and I thought that if the Drapion stayed in, I could kill it, which of course it doesn't, switches the Porygon 2. But because he switched out, I knew I still outsped the Porygon 2. I knew I could get out of there and at least get my special attack back for later. And so I switched to Roserade. Looking back on when I switched to Roserade, I'm trying to think of why I did Roserade instead of Mega Pinsir. I think that my logic at this point in time was that Roserade might have a good enough damage output on its own that it could go toe-to-toe with Porygon 2, and I wouldn't have to risk Pinsir so early on to lose it to a super effective Charge Beam or something like that. But you see the Sludge Bomb's damage output isn't all that much, and then I see the Ice Beam from the Porygon 2. I knew I couldn't stay in at that point, so I switched to my Low-Tick. And my Low-Tick I wasn't switching to hit with Scald or Ice Beam. I was only switching so that I could Dragon Tail Porygon 2 out and hopefully get a better matchup later. So the Gallade comes out. I knew that Gallade got Leaf Blade. I thought that maybe Scald would do more damage than it did, and obviously it didn't do that much at all. And so I had to switch to Noivern, just to see what item the Gallade had. Really was my only goal there. And I see that it's a choice scarf, which is good news because it won't do that much damage to Roserade. But it's bad news because I've lost my only Scarfedmon on my team because of the knockoff and because it went down. So Roserade comes in, I'm able to take the Drapion out, which really was just a sack off to get a better Pokemon in. And this point, you realize, wow, I don't have a defensive wall anymore. I did not prepare really at all for Weavile. Mine is carrying close combat on Pinsir. And so I knew I had to get Roserade out of there and save it for later. I switched to Milotic, essentially just sacking it off because nothing could live the hit from the Weavile. And I switched to Mew. Now my logic to switching to Mew was that I had HP investment and I thought that I would be able to live a knockoff from a Weavile and get my weakness policy boost, but it completely OHKOs me. I'm pretty sure that he calced it so that it would OHKO. And this point in the match, with Mew just completely needlessly sacrificed, Skarmory down, Noivern, which was my Scarfedmon, down. I knew in the back of my head I can live an Ice Shard. I've seen Pinsir live super effective like Ice type moves before. I knew I could live an Ice Shard, but I think I even calced it because I was calcing for Quick Attack versus Close Combat, and for some stupid reason, and as soon as I selected my move, I knew I messed up. I picked Quick Attack instead of Close Combat, which meant that the Weavile got to live. Close Combat would have been an OHKO, without question, quad effective with that kind of strength, or with that kind of base power. Weavile would have been gone. And even then, I would have stood a chance, because I could have Quick Attacked the Gallade, I could have Close Combated the Kyurem, I could have Close Combated the Porygon. But because I elected to Quick Attack, I threw the game away, and at this point, it was over. Another Ice Shard, Pinsir is gone. Another Ice Shard, Roserade was gone. And so that was the end of the match. It was a 4-0 in my opponent's favor. There's not a lot that I can say as far as what I could have done differently, because I talked about it in the video. If I had Close Combated with the Pinsir, I would have given myself a chance. So I wouldn't have let Skarmory go down so early. I might have stood a better chance. If I would have not sacrificed Mew, I would have had another Pokemon in the back, and then if I had Close Combated, I would have had Mew, and I think I could have won the match at that point. Really, without question, I think I would have been able to do it. But you know, it's hard looking at the Darkrais team, because I prepared so heavily for things like Garchomp and Mega Altaria, and neither of them came. Really, I have to give the credit to first to my opponent for building a team that I didn't expect. I didn't expect to see neither Garchomp nor Mega Altaria. And I learned this week that I'm just not prepared to deal with something like Weavile if my defensive wall goes down. So this was a hard week for me. I really kind of needed this win. I knew that I could get it. Going into the week, I felt really confident looking at my opponent's team, despite being a little bit concerned about Mega Altaria. But about halfway through this match, I realized that I planned poorly and I played poorly. And so, frankly, I'm happy to put this week behind me, thanks to Detroit Darkrais. They're a consistent part of our league, and I really appreciate the match that they gave me. And so, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!